Hi, third graders. I was so excited to see your end of the unit research projects that you did on your animals. The third grade teachers and I have been so impressed with what we've seen, so thank you for putting in so much work into that animal research project. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some poetry. Mrs. Leach and I have teamed up, and we're going to do some poetry reading and some poetry writing. And hopefully this will be kind of a fun way to wrap up the year in the last few weeks. So I'd like to share with you today a couple of poems that I have with me. And I'm going to tell you why they're special in a minute, especially this first one. I'll tell you in a few minutes. But this one is called April. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see me. Can you see the picture? Slide it over here. All right, April. Mud season. April showers may bring flowers, but mostly they bring muck. When I was playing in the yard, I stepped into the yuck. Mud filled my boots and then my pants, and now it fills my coat. I'll say a prayer and hold my breath so mud won't fill my throat. But even though there's so much mud, I'm stuck up to my eyes. I like April more than May, 'cause May will bring black flies. This one, for one thing, I picked it because the black flies are coming out. And I thought, this is perfect. But I also picked it because it's by one of my most loved poets. And his name is Robert Patil. And that's because I know him in real life. He lives in Levant, and he's written poetry books. So I thought I'd start with one by him because I'm super excited about the fact that I know him, and he works at my kids' school in Levant. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to share a couple other ones that I thought were pretty funny. This is from a book called A Pizza the Size of the Sun. And this is kind of some short poems in here. This one's called My Mother Made Me Chicken. It's hard to figure out how to hold the book here. I'll do it this way. My mother makes me chicken. Her chicken makes me cough. I wish that when she made it, she took the feathers off. Isn't that funny? I have one more I want to share with you. This one is called Someone Swiped the Cookies. Here's the picture. Someone swiped the cookies that were really meant for me. I'm sure I know who did it. She'll regret her little spree. She snuck into the pantry where she found the cookie jar. She thinks she's really clever, but she won't get very far. I'm tracking down the culprit. She shouldn't be hard to find. She left a very messy trail of cookie crumbs behind. There she is! I've got her! She has crumbs around her lips. Oh no, she finished every one, my luscious chocolate chips. And this one, I think the dog is saying the poem, and the girl ate the cookies that he wanted. So I have a lot of funny poems, and poetry is really meant to make you feel things. And one of the emotions you feel when you read poetry is happiness, or things that make you laugh, so they're funny. And so I really want to focus on some of those today. I want to share with you a little slideshow that I put together about poetry, and it's to introduce you to some poetry for third grade. Now I know in second grade you did some poetry writing, so probably some of this will be a review to you. So first I wanted you to know that poetry comes in a lot of different places in your world that you may not even think of. For example, nursery rhymes. That's probably the first time that you started to hear poetry in your life was when you heard nursery rhymes like the Itsy Bitsy Spider and Patty Cake and all of those fun ones. Those are really your first poems. Also, if you listen to the radio or you listen to any music, if you take the lyrics of those songs, that's poetry. And when people put poetry and they mix it in with instruments and music, it makes songs. You also probably have heard jingles and commercials like, give me a break, break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. That's a poem. And the same thing with some of the games you play at recess time, some of the games that you do with your hands, like when you're clapping and you say some of those rhymes, those are poems. Here's a pretty popular one. One of my favorite movies and one of my favorite songs. If you just look at the lyrics of the words, this makes a poem. Look at that. The snow glows white on the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. This is that famous song, Let It Go. But if you look at the way it's written as a poem. Here are some famous poets. Over on this side, we have a bunch that you may have heard of. If you haven't heard of these people yet, you probably will soon in your life. They're pretty famous people. Emily Dickinson, Robert Frost, Edgar Allan Poe. And what I've done is you can actually click on these people and it will take you to a link that shows about their life. So just let me show you this. I clicked on Emily Dickinson, and this is a biography of her life. So if you're interested in learning more about these poets, all you have to do is click on the link, click on their names, and it will take you to a page that tells about them. You can do that for all these people that are underlined. Then over here, I wrote down some pretty popular poets for kids, like Shel Silverstein. He's the one that wrote The Giving Tree, and lots of poetry books also, like Where the Sidewalk Ends and A Light in the Attic. And I also have some other people you may have heard of. Jack Prelutsky, he's the one that just read that book that I was reading a poem out of, The Pizza the Size of the Sun. And down at the very bottom, Robert Patil, that's who wrote this book that I shared with you about April. He's the one I know. So I'd like you to take some time and click around on, you don't have to do all the poets today, but click around and read about a couple of the poets. Read about their lives and what they've done. On this next slide, I have some links you can click on to hear some poetry. So on this very first one, if you click on the Children's Poetry Archive, it has all kinds of poetry that you can click on. So for example, there's always going to be a featured poem, and all you have to do is click the play button when you hear something or you see something that you want to try out. There's different themes that you can click on and hear the poems about those themes. Okay, there's different archives. I'm going to take you to one real quick I want you to hear that I listened to earlier today. Let's see if I can find it. This was, listen. This was a pretty funny one called Alligator Pie. And I'm going to go on here to 1 minute. This is where it starts.
Alligator pie. Alligator pie, alligator pie. If I don't get some, I think I'm gonna die. Give away the green grass, give away the sky, but don't give away my alligator pie. Alligator stew, alligator stew. If I don't get some, I don't know what I'll do. Give away my furry hat, give away my shoe, but don't give away my alligator stew. Alligator soup, alligator soup. If I don't get some, I think I'm gonna droop. Give away my hockey stick, give away my hoop, but don't give away my alligator soup.
Pretty funny, huh? So when you're looking at this slide, you could just click right here and it has all kinds of poetry to listen to. If you click on this one where the sidewalk ends, it's going to take you to a whole bunch of Shel Silverstein's poems that you can click on in here. And this one, this is Jack Prelutsky, the one that wrote this book. If you click there, it's going to take you to somebody that's reading one of his poetry books. So those are some fun things to listen to. And this last slide goes over some of the types of poems that we're going to be learning about. Now, some of these Mrs. Leach is going to be doing with you. Some of them you're going to come across when you're doing some of your poetry reading. And the first one is one that Mrs. Leach is going to be doing with you this week. It's the acrostic poetry, which I think a lot of you have tried out before. It's where you have a word that you write down the side of your paper, and each letter of that word starts a line of your poem. That's one you're going to be working on this week. There's also the ABC kind of poems, which is a little bit like your alphabet book you made, so that each line begins with one of the letters. So there's a letter for A, a letter for B. Autobiographical poem is one about yourself. A ballad is a poem that tells a story. A cinquain or cinquain is a five-line poem, and the first and last lines have 2 syllables. There's color poetry that expresses feelings. There's a diamante, which is related to the cinquain poem. It's not rhymed, and it has 7 lines, and it makes the shape of a diamond. Another one you're going to focus on this week is haiku. I'm going to share a book with you the next time we meet that has some haikus that kids have written. It's a 3-line poem. The first line has 5 syllables. The second line has 7 syllables, and the last line has 5 syllables again. And here's some more. There's a limerick, which is a funny poem. Rhyming, that has, words that rhyme every 2 lines or every 4 lines. There's poetry that comes in a shape. And there's an ode, which is usually something that makes you feel some really strong emotions. So as you're doing reading this week of poetry, you can kind of see some of these different ones that you're going to come across. You're going to go to my Epic account again, and this time I've made a collection of poetry books, and I have all kinds of poems in there. You're also going to find some that are just about acrostic or just about haiku. You can read those. So when it's your time to work on reading, and it's your time to do your 30 minutes of reading, you can either click on the Poetry Epic link and go read a bunch of books, or if you have some poetry books at your house, you can work on those. So today's assignment is going to be to look over this slideshow I made for you. Now there's no links at the beginning here, but when you get down to the poets, click around, learn about some of these famous poets. And then when you get to this slide, click around and listen to some of the poems. You're going to hear some really nice rhythms. Okay? So I hope you're as excited as I am and Mrs. Leach. And I hope that you find some favorite poems, because next week we're going to be sharing some of our favorites. Happy reading!